So over the past few months, I've been reading The Beginning of Infinity by David Deutsch. I have not read his other book, The Fabric of Reality, but that is next on my list. But this book I got recommended by Naval Ravikant, who uh, wrote a very popular book amongst entrepreneurs, and it was on like he raves about this book. So I picked it up and I could see why. And it's not an easy read. It took me some time, and there were certain sections like he gets into uh, quantum theory and the multiverse and the Infinite Hotel, which I actually was able to understand, but it gets pretty complex. Like he even has good amount of math in there and different diagrams, photons in, photons out. But I was able to extract like different nuggets of, I guess, wisdom from here. And I'm gonna go through some of them. And this is, I could definitely see myself coming back to this book. I've actually used ChatGPT to help me analyze a lot of the parts and to go a little bit deeper on certain sections, which I've actually been using ChatGPT to read books with me, which is something I never thought I would do, but it's actually a very good tool for that. The basic premise of the book, like the core idea, is that progress is unbounded and knowledge creation is the essence of being human. And that's actually the title. And Deutsch argues that we're at the beginning of the infinity, and namely after the European Enlightenment, where we started to question dogmas and orthodoxies, and we started coming up with explanations, good explanations, because not all explanations, he says, are good. And it's as much a philosophical book as it is science. I would say it's more philosophical than science. So he gets into things like infinity, obviously, universality, criticism, superposition, which I found super interesting, and I actually drew some of my own conclusions from there, which I'm going to get into. Fungibility, what makes flowers beautiful, and so what if knowledge had no limits? What does it mean to live at the beginning of infinity? And Deutsch argues that the Enlightenment was the beginning of the infinity, so we're only a couple centuries into it. The infinite nature of progress. It's also a decent history book because it gets into some of the Greek history. I got refreshed my knowledge on Sparta and Athens. He gets into that here in the Dream of Socrates, which I thought was really well written. It was a totally different style from the rest of the book, and it was put right in the middle of the book, so it's like a nice break from sort of the more heavy-handed like concepts you have to kind of deeply ponder. And again, it's not a book you can speed read through. I can definitely see myself coming back to it because I probably only caught half of what I should have caught. Um, I'll come back to it at some point, as with most good books, which this is definitely one of them. You'll come back to them many times throughout your life, and you are not the same person you were in the past. So you're not actually reading the same book. Like Mark Aurelius said, or some Stoic said, I've never stepped in the same river twice. The river has changed and I have changed. And while this book will not have changed when I come back to it, a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades from now, I would have. And my knowledge and my openness and my interest in certain topics probably would have. So this is definitely a classic. This is why not just the audiobook, because the way I read audiobooks, if I really like the book, I'll get the physical book or the Kindle copy as well, so I can read while I'm listening, or do both in the car, listen, then go back and read that chapter. It's kind of like deeper reading because when you're listening, it's more passive, but when you're actually reading and touching it, it's more real. So, the infinite nature of progress, Deutsch argues that there is no natural limit to what humans can achieve if they pursue better explanations. He says in this book, problems are inevitable, but he thinks every problem is solvable. Now, I connect this idea to my own business. Progress comes from solving problems and creating new knowledge. And as an entrepreneur, that's actually what generates value, and value is represented in our society with money. Universality is another topic that comes up a lot. Universality refers to systems capable of solving problems across multiple domains. For example, the idea of being able to explain something. Humans are universal explainers because they can create knowledge applicable in endless context. And the quote that he used in this book for that was, "The reach of explanations is unlimited." So that's what separates humans from every other species on this planet and maybe in the universe. Our ability to explain and to be universal explainers. Because now you're getting into the realm of abstraction. And there's another good book I'm reading called Solenoid by Mircea Cartarescu. I'm only about 20% done with it, but when I find similar books, and I've found that some of these books I've been getting recently have been related, and I like to read multiple books at the same time. So I find, like, for example, the concept of universality and the reach of explanations is unlimited. Mircea Cartarescu and Solenoid, which I will have a much longer separate review later because it's a fantastic book. He discusses four levels of being human, and the last one is hoping. So this is where he kind of differs from Deutsch, but one of them is man's ability to think about himself thinking, which in some ways is related to being an explainer and being a, because in Solenoid, which I think everyone should read as well, man's ability to certain people are more inclined to discover and to explore. And this is kind of Deutsch's concept with universality and the reach of explanations being unlimited. I mean, it could get deep, and I recommend you guys read multiple books at once. This is my style. I know some people that's too confusing because they can't remember which idea came from where. I don't think it matters which idea came from where. They're all going into your head. That's the purpose of a book. The engine of knowledge creation. So knowledge is corrigible. Knowledge grows through conjecture and refutation. Bad ideas are discarded through criticism, allowing good ideas to thrive. The quote from Deutsch, "The most important attribute of knowledge is that it is corrigible." So think of criticism as an active process of identifying and improving flaws in explanations. The book emphasizes that not all ideas are equally valid and that criticism helps select those that survive. Kind of similar to genes, and he actually gets into that towards the end in a chapter called The Evolution of Culture, where he discusses memes and genes. But memes, unlike genes, are actually selected by the user, whereas genes are selected by nature. Bad ideas are a disease. They must be diagnosed and discarded. He's clearly not a fan of religion. Uh, Superposition. This was the part where we get into the multiverse. This was the part where I started drawing all kinds of like different conclusions for myself. And I even came up with the idea that thoughts are superposition. They exist like in our brain. Thoughts are superposition, and it's only our consciousness that is able to select one, therefore make it fungible, which we'll get into fungibility. And that thought then becomes something that you can explain to others in the world, other consciousness. So superposition, it's important to note that David Deutsch does not say this about thoughts. It's something that I kind of came up with. But superposition shows that multiple states exist simultaneously until observed, which is most famously with the photon experiment, where light behaves like a wave, but also like a particle when it is observed. But when it's not observed, it's a wave. So it does not exist in any one place until the observer actually looks at it. And this is something that's proven now in quantum physics, and it's what leads to the multiverse theory, which there's a lot of smart people behind it that do believe in it. This book makes a compelling case for that. And I actually think that our thoughts, and this was where, like, what I extracted from it, our thoughts actually exist in multiple positions until our consciousness, whether it's by external factors like society or anything else, selects it and then gives an explanation to our fellow human beings that are willing to listen. Why are flowers beautiful? There's an entire section on this. Flowers all are beautiful because they're pollinators for evolutionary reasons, but humans perceive their beauty due to cultural and sensory factors. Beauty is an emergent meaning. This is the key concept in this chapter. And the quote that I liked from this section was beauty exists in the eye of the beholder, but it is grounded in the laws of nature. So the flowers can be a metaphor for how meaning and function can overlap, creating something universally resonant. And this universally resonant thing or idea can be considered beautiful. Same thing with music. Jordan Peterson has a similar idea of music where it's the perfect blend of chaos and order. And it's something that should be like beauty. You would think it's something subjective, but there's some inherent objective elements to it that I think is super interesting. Interchangeability and scalability. So this is where fungibility comes in here. Fungibility is the property of being interchangeable without loss of value. So for example, if I have 10 $1 bills and I loan you one and I tell you, hey, interest free, but in a week, just give me the dollar back. I don't care which dollar you give me back. It doesn't have to be my original dollar I gave you. And you don't care which of the $1 bills I give you. They're all the same. They're fungible, right? So that's related in my mind to superposition. And the act of selecting which one is similar to the act of observing something like a photon or the act of coming up with a thought consciously as opposed to unconscious thoughts. This relates to the scalability of ideas because interchangeable components enable adaptability and growth. And the quote here is fungibility underpins many aspects of our understanding of the universe. And it does relate to quantum physics and quantum theory, as I have kind of discussed here. There's some critiques and challenges. Deutsch provides a compelling vision of progress through knowledge creation rooted in optimism. It's good mental models to use. I like the quote that he had: optimism is the theory that all failures, all evils are due to insufficient knowledge. The book's abstract nature can be overwhelming, and its optimism may overlook practical limitations. To me, it's clear he's either atheist or agnostic, which I am not. I do believe in a higher power, being a god. David Deutsch would not agree with me, but I actually tend to side more with like Mircea Cartanescu from Solenoid, where he says a god is one who can exist and you can see hints of one further dimension that what you're capable of seeing. So I do think there's a higher power or powers out there. Um, Chris and I have these debates all the time. Definitely not from a religious or a dogmatic orthodoxy belief system, but more in the sense that there must be something higher that we don't understand. And I don't think knowledge can, like, knowledge is also infinite. So I don't think we'll ever actually get there, but there must be some there that is unreachable. And to me, I think that that's God. So closing, progress is infinite. Universality, criticism, and creativity are the engines of human advancement. The quest for good explanations will always be the beginning of infinity. I think it's super important read. Again, I'll come back to it. Don't have to agree with his philosophy. The book is amazing. So check it out. Let me know what this book or infinity, if you haven't read this book, just the concept of infinity mean to you, and how do you apply criticism in your own life to grow. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, comment, share. Bye bye.